I give you just a little update kind of on where we are with Worship Leader Search. We are still searching. I've had several conversations with different people that for one reason or another is not progressing, still working on one potential. But so you haven't heard anything, and there hasn't really been anything to share, but I just wanted to share that there's nothing to share. But what the plan is moving forward is Randy is going to be leading a couple weeks out of the month, and then Andrew Seppo, some of you know Andrew Seppo, he's going to be coming in and leading one weekend. And then on another weekend, some of you also might remember a Josh Ake. He's going to come in and lead 1 week a month. And we're going to continue that for the foreseeable future until we find the right person. And that's what we're really searching for, is the right person, looking for that one who fits the role and is called here and fits us well, and we fit them well. And so we're looking, we're praying, and y'all are praying at 10:02 for that too, right? Yeah, sure, yeah, right. Lie. But that is something that you can add to your 10:02 prayer list, that God would raise up those leaders for us. So that's just kind of where we are. Feel free anytime you want, send me a text, email, phone call, whatever. Just say, hey, what's going on? Any news? So I'll be happy to answer those for you. So that's kind of where we are. And as we get news or information, we'll update you as appropriate. All right? All right. Onward. Prayer is interesting. I remember as a kid, my grandparents, every time I'd see them, both sets, mom and dad's parents, each one, we'd go visit them or they'd come visit us. And at some point during the visit, it wouldn't be unusual for multiple times that they would say to us kids, to me, to all of us grandkids, I pray for you every day. I know my mom and dad prayed for us and prays for us every day. When my mom's parents passed away, and the last one passed away, mom was working full time. She was working with dad, and she just had this feeling, this sense that something was lost in the family because mom and dad, these prayer warriors, had passed away. And she just had this sense of, well, who's going to step up? And she goes, well, I have to. She quit her job so that she could stay home so that she could pray more. And pray for us kids and grandkids and spouses of grandkids that weren't even married yet. They're praying for spouses of kids that hadn't even been born yet. That was kind of the passion that mom had, and the power of that. There are Sundays that I know, I in my mind, I remind myself that Randy has prayed for me on this Sunday, and Fred prays for me. I know Fred prays for me, and I think of that. And there's a friend of mine in Ohio. Yes, there are a couple good things that come out of Ohio. My mom came out of Ohio, so there's a couple of good things that come out of Ohio. But there's a friend of mine in Ohio who is a pastor, and I know today he prayed for me. I texted Joel this morning, said, I'm praying for you, and he said, I'm praying for you. And there's that knowledge that I think of when I'm struggling, or I have uncertainty, or even at just different times, I think, oh, there are people praying for me. And there's such an encouragement in that, to know that somebody else has thought of me, somebody else is thinking about, somebody else is praying for me and lifting me before the throne and asking God to help me and asking God to give me wisdom and asking God to give me courage. There are so many times that I've been going through hard times and struggles and heartache and just broken. And in that low spot, I will remember there's people praying for me. And while it doesn't get me out of necessarily out of that difficult time, there is a mental shift that takes place and some peace that is beyond description, that it's just like, okay, it'll be okay. I don't have to have this because I know who does. And there's this incredible encouragement, incredible strength, incredible power that comes from knowing that somebody else has prayed for me. Not just me praying for me, but somebody else praying for me. I hope that you think that way and you remember that, like, oh, somebody else has prayed for me. That encourages you too. Do you ever wonder what happens to your prayers? You ever pray and you kind of like, well, where does it go? Is it, kind of like a mist, kind of like a smoke that just kind of goes up and it just kind of disappears, and maybe God hears it this one time and then it's over with and it's done with and we move on to the next one, and like I got to keep praying because the last one wasn't good anymore, expiration dates. I prayed in this moment and it's over and it's done, and so I got to pray it again. What happens? Have you ever stopped and thought about, where do my prayers go? Yeah, I know they go to God. I know they go to heaven. I know He hears them, but what? I'm going to read one verse to you this morning. It's in a context, obviously, and I'm not going to get into all of that because in Revelation chapter 5, verse 8, you can get there. There's lots of imagery going on here. Obviously, in Revelation, there's all kinds of imagery. We're talking about 24 beasts, and we're talking about the elders and angels, and we're talking about all these things that I don't want to get sidetracked into all of that. So we're just going to read this one verse to you this morning that tells us about prayer. Revelation chapter 5, verse 8. This is what John, who wrote Revelation, this is what he records. It says, "And when he took the scroll, the 4 living beings and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb. Each one had a harp, and they held gold bowls filled with incense, which are the prayers of God's people." If you have your Bible, if you have your pen, that might be something that you want to highlight, that you want to understand, that you want to remember. They held the gold bowls filled with incense, which are the prayers of God's people. When we think about what happens to our prayers, when we think about, okay, I prayed, somebody prayed for me, what happens to that? I prayed for you, because you shared with me, hey, I'm going through this, having this relationship issue, having this health issue. I pray for you. What happens? What does that mean? If you look back at this passage and you look, it says that they held the harps, so they have the harps in their left hand. We know that from other passages. They have the harp. There's a harp in their left hand, and there are these bowls in their right hand. And so on their left hand, picture in your mind, holding a harp and holding a bowl. Okay, what does this mean? And it says this harp, again, from other verses, we know that the harp represents the praises of His people. So before the throne, these beings, in their left hand, they have this harp of praise. What did we just do? We were praising God. We were singing. You go out and you see a sunset. And you're like, oh man, God, that is so beautiful. Men, you look at your wife and you think, whew, God, you did something good. Thank you, Jesus. Wives, you look at your husbands and you think, that's my man. Wow. It's kind of funny. The men were like, yeah. So nah. I don't want to take that one back. But the praises of God's people, it brings before the throne. These beings, they collect these praises. That's the harp. And in the right hand, they have these bowls, and it says that they are the incense, the prayers of God's people. The bowls that are full of your prayers. Where do your prayers go? They go into these bowls that are held by these beings in heaven, and they present them before the throne of God, and it says that they are an incense to God, and this incense goes up to him, and he smells them, and he breathes them in. Look at a couple other verses. In Revelation, just a couple pages back, in chapter 8, verses 3 and 4, John writes this, "And a great amount of incense was given to him to mix with the prayers of God's people as an offering on the gold altar before the throne. The smoke of the incense mixed with the prayers of God's holy people ascend up to God from the altar where the angel had poured them out." So these incense are continually being poured out before the throne. These prayers are continually being poured out before the throne. And this smell is rising up to the nostrils of God, and he's just breathing them in. David writes this in Psalm 141:2, "Accept my prayers as incense offered to you, and my upraised hands as an evening of praise." So you have David. What happens frequently when we praise? What do? We raise our hands. God, this is so cool. David saying, my upraised hands, my praise. And so you have David saying, my praise and my prayers, God, take them as an incense. You know, smell is one of the most powerful senses we have. It's the strongest trigger of memories and emotions out of all of our senses, is the sense of smell. You know, when I smell a certain smoke scent, and it's kind of a unique smell, I think of my Grandma and Grandpa Alexander's house, because they heated with wood. And I can go back to a kid, and I can put myself in that living room. When I smell raw meat, I think of my Grandpa Swank, because he was a meat cutter. He was a butcher, and we butchered all the time together, and I think of that. There's a certain smell that always takes me back to Africa. When I smell English leather, I think of my dad. He doesn't wear it anymore, but as a kid, he wore that all the time, English leather. So I smell English leather, and I think of my dad. I smell Brute 33. Any of you guys remember Brute 33? Going back a few years? Yeah? I think of the high school locker room. Because it's like everybody in the locker room wore Brute 33. Because that was the thing, and it was cheap, right? So a high school guy, you know, and you get out of gym class or practice or something like that, and portion control, you know, they're just Brute 33, I think, of the high school locker room. Smell is the strongest trigger of memory and emotion. And what does it say our prayers are? What does the word that it uses to describe our prayers to God? An incense. It's a smell. It's this, we have plug-ins in our house and in our car. We burn incense, and we have this smell. There is a smell that it is a pleasing aroma. And he is breathing in your prayers. That is this bowl that is poured out on the altar before God, and it says in Revelation chapter 8, it says it goes up to God, and he smells, and he's just, so good. He smells that, and it triggers a memory, it triggers a thought. Oh, I know who this is. I know what this is about. Oh, this smell is asking for. This smell is what they need. This smell is what they want. This smell is Joyanne. This smell is Bill. This smell is, oh, I know who this is. I love that idea that our smells trigger God's memory and God's thought and God's attention to us. Has that ever happened to you before? You get a smell and it just takes you back in time? It says that our prayers, the prayers of God's people, who is that? You, me. Remember in John chapter 17, Jesus prayed for you and me. The end of John chapter 17. Remember that passage right before he dies? God, help them who would believe in their message, referring to the disciples. Help them that they might know and they might believe. And that prayer of Jesus for you and for me is still in that bowl, is still an incense burning before the throne that God remembers and that God is praying for. The prayers that we have prayed, this is for me, it's a transformative thought. The prayers of all time are still in that bowl. It's still an incense rising up before the throne of God. The prayers of my grandparents who are long since passed away, those prayers are still in this bowl. It's still an incense rising up to God when they're saying, pray for Michael because he really does stupid things. God protect him. Give him wisdom. That prayer is still an incense before God. The prayers that Becky and I prayed for our children before they were even born are still an incense. The prayers of my parents are still an incense. Dad tells a story about walking by the farmhouse, living in the farmhouse, walking by a bedroom, seeing Grandma Batterby kneeling by the bed, praying in the middle of the day. Those prayers are still an incense before the throne. That's powerful stuff. Our prayers are powerful and effective, are they not? James tells us. The prayers of a righteous person accomplishes great things, right? Why is that? Our prayers are eternal. Our prayers are forever. James also tells us, this is an interesting contrast. James says our life is but a mist, here today and gone tomorrow. Our life goes away. Our prayers are a bowl of incense before the throne of God forever. Have you realized the power of your prayers? Have you realized that when we talk to God, they are eternal? Remember Jesus in Matthew chapter 7? Sermon on the Mount, what's he tell his disciples? Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. Don't stop. Why do you think Jesus might have said that? Do you think he understood Revelation chapter 5? Do you think he forgets? The more you pray about something, the more you're adding to the bowl, the more you're adding to the incense, the more you're giving, the more legacy that you're leaving, the more prayers that last forever. You see why it's not just we should pray, but we should be praying. Not just once. Once is good. But the power of continual, the power of added, the power of prolonged, the power of many prayers, the power of enlisting other people to pray. We'd call our parents up when the kids were going through something. Hey, join us. Okay. These prayers and these bowls of the angels. And you notice that when the beings present our praises and our prayers before the throne, they bow down before God and they pour, like, here they are. God, here are the prayers of your people. Here are the praises of your people. You think they take them seriously? You think there's power in that? You think God is moved by that? And he takes that. Some memories are sweet, some are hard. The prayers we cry out in joy and celebration, the prayers we cry out in agony and pain, and that smell that might have a little bitterness to it that God enters into that. It's like, oh, I understand. I know. I feel you. I care. I hurt with you. I'm there with you. I'm entering into it with you. This is the power of prayer, that they are constantly, forever before the throne. The power of the thought of our life is a mist, but our prayers are eternal. Wow. If you don't have grandkids, are you praying for your grandkids? You know, you can get a head start in praying for your grandkids. Praying for your kids' spouses, praying for your children, praying for your spouse, praying for your ancestors, ones who you will never, ever meet. Your prayers are eternal, and your prayers are going to affect their life because they are constantly before the throne of God. Man. I think I want to challenge you, maybe do something a little different. Set an empty bowl out in your house. Take a special bowl or a unique bowl or something like that and just set it someplace prominent in your house. And you see that bowl and you can ask yourself, how full is this bowl? You see that bowl and you can remember all the prayers I've ever prayed are in that bowl before the throne. I like this bigger vase. There isn't a lot of rocks in here, but these are rocks that people have left on the altar at different times to, I want to leave something. I'm going to sacrifice. I'm giving this up, and they've left a rock up here and have walked away from it. And I've taken all of those and I've put them in here. And for you, it would be really hard to go back and maybe impossible to figure out and remember which rock you left in here, but God knows exactly which one is yours. You have left it, He remembers. You have prayed, He is still listening, He is still hearing, it is still an incense to Him. He still cares. So maybe you want to come up and you want to get a rock and you want to put a rock in that bowl. Here's a prayer. Here's another prayer. Pick a rock up out of your driveway, out of your flower bed someplace, and place it in that bowl, and there's a prayer. Here's a prayer for this. Here's a prayer for my kids. Here's a prayer for my grandkids. I'm praying for my spouse. Pray for your spouse. Might change the way you view your spouse. Pray for your kids. Might change the way you view your kids. Pray for your parents. It might change the way you view your parents. You can let that bowl sit empty in the middle of the dining room table, kitchen table, counter. Maybe set one in your car, set one in your console, get a small one, set it in your console. Prayers of your prayers are an incense before the Lord. He is breathing those in. And do something that may be a little awkward. I don't care, I'm awkward. I just want to spend a little bit of time praying this morning. Joanne, would it be okay for you just came and and played a little something. Give us a little background. The altar's open. You know, the altar, I haven't said this in quite a while, but the altar comes from the Old Testament where sacrifices were made. Prayers are sacrifice. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy, it takes vulnerability, it takes intentionality. Prayers are sacrifice. Prayers takes effort. It takes work. I don't know that it's a natural thing to most of us. But the altar is a place of sacrifice where there was death all the time. There was always death on the altar. And the altar is open if you want to come and if you want to just say, Lord, here is this thing. Here is this person. Here is this stuff. Here is my need. Here is my want. Here's my desire. You don't have to come to the altar, but man, the altar's here if you want to come and you want to give that praise and that incense. Obviously, you can take a stone or take a little cross as a memory. But I just want us to take a minute, take a couple minutes, and just pray. And as you pray in this quiet, be thinking about, hey, I'm filling the bowl of heaven. And this is a pleasing aroma to my Jesus, to my God. And he cares, and it'll be there forever. This prayer will never go away. God will remember, God will know, God will answer. Keep asking, keep seeking, keep knocking. So in a couple minutes, Randy, why don't you and the team come on up and just give us a couple minutes, and then come out and close us. So if you want to kneel at your chair, if you want to lay on the floor prostrate before God, if you want to come and kneel at the altar, give your incense to him.
That chorus is one of my favorites. I didn't even know the name of it. It's called Cares Chorus. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. Sounds and smells. We're talking about smells, but sounds too. Let's sing Goodness of God. Once you stand for a moment. If you need to continue to sit, that's fine. But I'll invite you